Welcome to yet another show of Reinventing Finance. Today we have a guest from across the Atlantic. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. And I guess and I have to say, I always, and I would imagine you're similar. I was always more of a Star Wars than a Star Trek buff myself, I have to admit. So how does one become the Luke Skywalker of insurance policies? How does that happen?
Okay. Funny background story on that. I used to have in my title. So you're referring to, I think, the LinkedIn title that I have up. So back in the day when we were building our company and I was having trouble raising money and very frustrated with the whole process, I was listening to a lot of angry rap music, particularly Dr. Dre. You may not have ever heard of Dr. Dre over in Europe, but
no, I've heard of Dr. Dre. I don't listen to that much rap music myself, but I have heard of Dr. Dre.
Yeah, I don't listen to it very often, except for like in certain periods of my life. And so I was just like listening to it and updating my LinkedIn profile, and just on a whim wrote in the Dr. Dre of insurance under my title and didn't think of anything of it. And then started going to, still doing the conference circuit like we used to do pre-COVID, right? And people would like start stopping me and say, "Hey, what's up, Dr. Dre?" And it's like, what is going on right now? And I get emails like, "Hey, Dr. Dre of insurance, can we talk?" And people would like cite rap lyrics and all sorts of crazy stuff. So I did that for a while. And then the new Star Wars trilogy came out, right? And I was like, all right, let's freshen things up. So I just changed it to the Luke Skywalker of Insurance Policies. So it's like self-titled. It's really lame, but I don't know. LinkedIn's really boring if you do the same thing that everyone else does. So I try to liven it up.
And, I think, for me, it's a yellow background.
Yeah.
But, there you go. Now, awesome. And we've kind of talked previously, but if you have founded your own company, RiskGenius, that was acquired by Bold Penguin, who your title is now Vice President of Product and Marketing. Is that correct?
No, Vice President of Product Marketing. So very specifically just focused on how do we tell the story of the problems we're solving and the people that we're helping.
Awesome. And could you just kind of walk us through what your journey was, what you did at RiskGenius, how that came to be to partner and then kind of merge with Bold Penguin? Just kind of walk us through that if you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to be an insurance claim attorney, hated document review. And so while I was practicing, I was kind of paying attention to the technology that was emerging in the legal tech space. And there was like machine learning was starting to be applied to electronic discovery. Basically, machines going through the documents first to pick out the ones that are most relevant, and then the lawyer reviews those. So instead of reviewing 1 million documents, you're reviewing 1,000. Mm-hmm. And that sounded really awesome to me, even though it would have totally screwed up billable hours for me. It didn't matter. I hated reviewing documents. So I was paying attention to that. Initially left the practice a law to try to solve claim document management. Basically, you have a big construction project, it blows up, people need to go through the files and figure out what happened. And so we were doing that, created software to do claim document analysis. And one of the carriers we worked with said, "Hey, we like your software. Could we use this for policy review, like insurance policy review?" And I said, "Sure, what's policy review?" And like I mentioned, found myself in a rabbit hole that still have not gotten out of. It turns out people in the United States really don't have a lot of insights into what's in their insurance policies. The small businesses, big businesses really struggle to understand their policies or don't even pay attention. The agents are supposed to be advising them, but they really struggle to go through, like here in the United States, insurance policies are really, really complex because there's like 50 states and the 50 states require endorsements and policy forms. And so you get these documents that like are very hard to understand. So the agents struggle, and then the carriers struggle because they have literally 50,000, 150,000, even 2 million forms that they have to find stuff in. And so we ended up creating software to help people go through the clauses and understand the contents of their policy forms. and that's called RiskGenius. So yeah, we started that in 2015, started that in carriers, and here we are.
And how, because you're now with Bold Penguin, how did that kind of came to be? And then also, I think, you know, what's changed now that you're part of the American family group?
Yeah. So I knew Ilya Bodner, who's the CEO, from just being at conferences. And then we had a mutual investor in Hudson Structured Capital Management. And so Ilya and I got connected by Hudson. They said, hey, you all should talk. Your systems, your two software applications maybe could work together. And so we started talking, and honestly, I was very much wowed by the big vision of Bold Penguin. And I thought, okay, this could be a huge distribution platform for the RiskGenius product. It could both integrate into the Bold Penguin product, and it also can serve as a standalone product that carriers can still buy. And so we started talking, I think it was like January of 2020. As we all know, the world changed pretty dramatically in February and March of 2020. We picked talks back up in April and kind of got to October and closed the deal. So yeah, Bold Penguin acquired RiskGenius, and then in February of 2021, American Family Insurance acquired Bold Penguin. You know, American Family was looking to get more into commercial insurance. They support independent agents. They were already using the platform, and so it was an opportunity for them to make a big investment in commercial insurance.
Awesome. Just out of curiosity, has any if you're kind of being acquired by what I would consider probably one of the larger suppliers of Bold Penguin, right? Mm-hmm. Because Bold Penguin is a big distribution and lead generation network. It would also be interesting if you could kind of walk us through what the different problems Bold Penguin is solving.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll start with that. So what's the business model of what's that biggest commercial exchange in the galaxy? Yeah. So what can you walk us through what you guys are doing below the surface?
Yeah, happy to. So I always start with the problem that's being solved, right? And in the United States, small business insurance prior to online distribution was very inefficient and oftentimes unprofitable. You know, you're dealing with smaller premium dollars, smaller dollar value in the policies. And so every time you touch that policy or help out that insured or call somebody to try to get them to buy insurance through you, you just basically make that policy unprofitable. And so small business insurance, of all the commercial insurance sectors, small business insurance really needed to come online in the United States. And so Bold Penguin saw that. They understood how APIs worked very deeply. And so they started building a platform. Initially, they started building a platform where small businesses come in and get connected to an insurance agent that helps then that business find their insurance. And then they also built then the quote and bind software so that the agent can take that small business right there on a phone call and online, fill out the application one time, get lots of quotes from carriers, and then go and bind that insurance. Mm-hmm. That really wasn't a thing until Bold Penguin came around. There'd been people that had tried. And so, yeah, we're at I actually was debating this with somebody on LinkedIn. Like, we think we're at the kind of early majority stage now of adoption of this type of technology. And we can go into this, but like COVID, the COVID pandemic was a big kind of Kickstarter for the digital insurance efforts here in the United States.
And so how does it work in practice? Is it so that, let's say, so if you basically replicate the insurance products, the rating tables, etc., and then some insurers might have some REST APIs, probably the modern ones you might directly connect to an API, but for the other ones, you'll probably replicate, and then there's some form of batch or even single file exchange. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, I mean, we really focus on carriers that have the APIs to
Okay.
connect them into the platform, right? Because it really does give the agent the best experience.
Yeah.
And then we've just started introducing what we call offline carriers as well. So if you don't find an online carrier, you can actually pull out the application. Here in the United States, we use Accord forms to fill out kind of all the information about the business. So you can export out an Accord form from the Bold Penguin platform if you don't find what you want. And then you can take that to the offline carriers and see if they can basically underwrite and fill your need for insurance.
Cool. And you also, I think it's mentioned, you also have a lead exchange. Is that correct? So,
oh, one thing I have to modify there, it's a prospect exchange. And this is a big distinction. Actually, if you go into the Bold Penguin office, you'll see a big sign up. This is one of the first things I ever noticed. I was like, I don't understand what that is. It's a big sign with a cross, like an X through the word leads.
Okay.
And actually, I think it's maybe one of the most interesting parts of Bold Penguin. You know, there's a lot of sources for leads, like cold leads in commercial insurance, which is basically just a business name and phone number and maybe a person's name of somebody that somehow fell into some funnel.
Yeah.
And so those kind of leads are notoriously not very productive. Like the close rate is very small. So what Bold Penguin's done that's completely different is they've created, essentially they have this customer service center where a business, you know, we have lots of partners that send us small businesses interested in getting new insurance. And so what happens is the small business comes into the customer center at Bold Penguin via a phone call. Our reps then start getting information from that business, you know, name, basically we fill out like a third of the application. And that business indicates their intent to buy new insurance. Like they are on the call, somebody's talking and they're like, yes, we are interested in insurance. And then at that point, that we call them quotable prospects. That quotable prospect is passed to the insurance agent in our software application and on the phone so that the agent can get on there and run through the rest of the application, answer the insurance questions that the specific insurance carriers have, and then get real-time quotes for the small business. They can explain them and then they can close them on that call. So it's a much different experience than people have done in the past.
Okay, cool. I think and I guess then the business model is around, you know, there's a price per lead and then there's something, you know, per bound policy. So usual kind of lead and intermediation business model, plus probably some, I don't know, setup fees if it's really complicated to get a carrier to the platform.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, we have lots of different tiers, frankly. So like sometimes we have agents using just our quote and bind software, right? So they'll pay a SaaS fee, for example, in that situation. And then on top of the software, you can buy prospects like you mentioned. And so there's a cost associated with that. And then other times our larger customers will actually build their own storefront on top of Bold Penguin via our SDK, our APIs. And so that's actually kind of the I don't know the right phrase, but like that is the sweet spot in my opinion, right? If you can actually start generating organic leads through a digital storefront and buying prospects that are very specific to your niche and then doing real-time quoting, I mean, that's why I think actually we're kind of at a kind of a new wave of small business insurance where it's going to get really, really profitable for the early adopters that are going out and doing this.
And have you heard of a company called Thinksurance out of Germany? I
haven't actually, no.
I mean, I'll send you the link. Just have a look. It's quite interesting. I think one thing goes for sure. SME insurance is like a massive market. It hasn't been targeted in the same way that personal lines could, or that large commercial could. And I think there's a lot of bets being placed on that business. And I think the playbook is being written as we speak.
Yep, totally agree.
But it's certainly what you're describing, the blend of digital advisory, quote bind, but also close to the distribution seems to be where these Venn diagrams seem to coalesce, at least from what I seem to glean from the market.
Yeah, I mean, and it's all about like, how do you generate the leads cost effectively? And then how do you like create a hyper efficient way to quote and close those leads?
Yeah.
That's the center spot, right, of the Venn diagram that you mentioned.
And exactly, and you need to kind of touch these things together, because otherwise you're just producing useless leads and getting, then you're misincentivized. It's a little bit like running an MGA and not giving two shits about the combined. Also not a great model for the carrier, right? So, it's about incentivization.
Really agree.
Now, was there and I would imagine COVID, and I think everywhere it was, everyone saw this thing. Was it the CEO, CIO, or COVID accelerating your digital transformation? Haha. I think we've all seen that over the last 12 months through social media. But was all of it positive for you, for Bold Penguin on the COVID impact, or was it also a bit nuanced?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, it's definitely nuanced. I'd say Bold Penguin accelerated through COVID-19. And what I mean by that is like, you had this event where starting in March, everyone had to be at home.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, I always try to like imagine what were people doing before and what are they doing now? So before, you would go and meet an insurance agent and talk to them about your needs for small business insurance, or you go to their office and help them fill out an application. So that wasn't possible anymore. And so as a result, there was an influx of businesses looking for insurance online. We actually saw this in our statistics. We follow quote starts as one of our key indicators. So small business quote starts, August of 2020 was the first month where we ever had 100,000 plus quote starts in like that 1 month from small business.
That would mean someone starts a quote, right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay. Just never.
So before, 70, 80, 90,000, August was definitely the first month. And then you also saw a bunch of carriers trying to figure out, oh no, we need to get online right now, right? And so they're trying to build out their tool, their systems to do that. And so Bold Penguin definitely saw an acceleration. On the RiskGenius side, RiskGenius was like a back office solution, and budgets at carriers for back office solutions were frozen in a lot of places, right? And so many of our deals were paused, and those deals have now been restarted here in 2021. But yeah, it was a tricky year because everyone, when you're trying to just figure out how do we give 5,000 people a laptop to go work from home, that's your back office problem. It's not like, what is the policy language that we have that we're trying to solve for? So, priorities definitely shifted last year, and then they're reshifting back now that everyone's gotten comfortable with how they're working.
I mean, I usually quip, for us, we enable growth. And, for most of 2020, growth was not the main agenda. There was kind of what's happening. And unless you were in the business of reselling laptops, webcams, or Zoom licenses, things, I think that would have been pretty sweet spot, right? Because there was actually, you couldn't buy these, people couldn't buy webcams anymore, right? Because everyone just had to get those.
May I ask just general question about the numbers, so people have a kind of impression how big, let's say, the current setting is, or between the different steps, also because of your LinkedIn profile, so to say.
Are you talking about numbers in terms of like Bold Penguin scale?
Yeah, for instance, because let's say this is a huge space, this SME environment, and then you have, let's say, the more broad companies, they cover everything, and then you have the companies probably come next to that who are much more focused on a product or on a certain profession, etc.
Yeah, so, and you can tell me if this answers the question, but like the small business insurance market in the United States is very, very fractured, right? It's like lots of carriers have little tiny slices of the pie. Yeah. And so, and we are like the distribution platform, the infrastructure for many of those carriers. And so I think last year we did 1.1 million quote starts for the year. which is a large number as I understand it, if you compare it to other carrier kind of pieces of the pie. And so that's the number that we track, is the 1.1 million quote starts. There's other numbers that I wish I could share. We don't actually share a lot of numbers around our successes because that can be misconstrued, but it's that quote start number that we really track heavily. Yeah, so that's kind of how we define success, is like, how are we doing at the quote starts?
So how many, just because sometimes out of a more fragmented European mindset, we know that the United States is really big, but we sometimes forget.
Yep.
So how many, what would you see, do you have a number top of your mind, how many small businesses are there? What's the premium pie? Something like where you just kind of go, oh, God.
Market share or what's
I should know this off the top of my head, and it's something I've been meaning to. So small business is really tricky in the United States because everyone uses different definitions for what is small business.
Same in Europe.
Gosh, I actually am going to plead ignorance on that question because I cannot recall that. If I gave you a number, it'd be wrong. There's like different numbers popping up in my head. So I will tell you, like, McKinsey came out with like a study in 2016 that was quite kind of startling, where they said that 70% of small businesses in the United States were now shopping in non-traditional systems. So like, think about call centers, but also digital distribution. However, of those small businesses, there's another statistic that we came across where like 6% right now of small businesses are like active shoppers for new commercial insurance policies. So there's a huge unlock that still needs to happen in the small business insurance space. Like, we're targeting that 6%. That's what we've been focused on at Bold Penguin in the past. There's like 94% of small businesses that we can still unlock. And think about like renewals. So like, not the new businesses or people looking for new policies or new carriers, but the 94% that have policies already that have not thought about switching. Frankly, like I always go back to like the time that we got insurance for RiskGenius at the very beginning. I remember filling out this form and I hated it. It was like 35 pages. And like, we were a brand new business. So like, it was questions that were completely nonsensical to me. Like, what's your EBITDA? And I was like, I don't know. I'm trying to set up QuickBooks right now so I can figure out my EBITDA. So like, the forms didn't make sense. And then like, as we went through and progressed as a company, we were still a small business, even though we'd raised money from venture capital. And so like, we would just renew automatically every year, right? That's kind of the state of that 94% of small businesses, is the insurance policy is just renewing every year, because it's so hard for an insurance agent to go out there and shop. And so that's the whole point of having a digital platform, is you can go out and actually shop your policy for the small business and see if there's a better option out there. So that's what we're trying to get to.
I fully get it. Listen, I've been doing Insurtech for the last 6 years.
Yep.
I think I shopped around, and we have a price comparison site in Germany, and things are easy. Even but personally, I was like, I tried to actually, when Lemonade entered German market and had different policy, I tried to compare it, and I just gave up.
Yeah, it's just
really hard. And on a small business, would someone like, how would someone like Simply Business slot in? Would that be a competitor or just another market participant? Are they doing something very different? I'm just using wrong analogies.
I'm not going to talk specifically about them for various reasons, but like, there are other distribution platforms out there. There are other, I think what you see a lot is a lot of companies that have a secret sauce to acquire prospects, right? Think of maybe I know how to go out and get startups that just raised their first Series A to go and buy insurance from me. Or I know how to find restaurants that are franchised and help them place their insurance policy. I think you're seeing a lot of those types of companies pop up. Those are exactly the types of companies we partner with, those types of insurtechs. So many of those that you can think of are on our platform, whether it's buying prospects, selling prospects, or using our quote and bind technology. Yeah, it runs deep. Like we are at Bold Penguin, we're very neutral in this. We don't, if you can use our platform, basically, right? So whether you're an insurtech, an MGA, a carrier, a traditional agent, a giant brokerage, a mom and pop shop, we don't care. Like, we don't really see these competitors as people we can't partner with.
And I mean, I think we're seeing that more and more as also, you know, certain things become more headless, as APIs allow you to do. You can be a collaborator in one aspect, a competitor in another, and it just, you know, it just kind of makes sense. You'll kind of take these cases one case at a time. Just when you mentioned neutrality, and I think that would segue, did you find any pushback from carriers, just from a kind of political thing, maybe just as an excuse, I don't know, to just kind of say, yeah, you're not neutral anymore if you're owned by American Family?
Yeah, if that occurred, I'm not aware of it, frankly. There was definitely phone calls I was on with carriers where they said, oh yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. And by the way, you have a giant backing now. Like, we know American Family's not going away. So we know you're not going away. So that makes things a lot easier.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So, you know, if it had been other brands in the space that were very, very large in commercial insurance, it definitely could have been an issue. But like American Family Insurance, you know, primarily is like a homeowner's policy, car insurance, like personal insurance brand. And they're looking to expand in the commercial side. So I think everyone was comfortable with that, as far as I'm aware.
Awesome. No, I think, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, funny enough, probably one of the most developed price comparison markets, you know, the UK, Admiral owns, you know, its own price comparison site. So I think one needs to take notice, and these things can happen. What that actually means and whether that's just an excuse, but I think actually having someone who has the foresight and the stamina to kind of say, this is here to stay in insurance, which is a, you know, it's a long-term business usually. I see that the benefits would outweigh any kind of shortcomings. I guess kind of one question I would, I always found interesting, and you know, if you were, and it's kind of around, you know, do you have a thesis around the SME insurance market, but maybe framed, let's say you got a job for, I don't know, a commercial carrier in charge of SME for growth for this, and you would consider it, etc. Right? Would you? What would you do in your point of, and you know, obviously get on Bold Penguin, right? Step one, obviously. But what would be the next step from your point of view? Because you've must seen certain patterns that if you now kind of go, if I had this power, this might, whatever, you know, I would channel it right there.
Absolutely. No, it's actually a conversation that I have now with carriers, just because I, you know, talk to people, and I always start with build out your APIs. Build out your APIs. If you haven't done that, you are so far behind and you don't even realize it. Build out your APIs, because like, and then the second thing I say, and I've just recently started saying this, is like, these distribution platforms, they're inevitable. You can't, the genie is already out of the bottle. You can't put it back. Any strategy not taking advantage of these distribution platforms is a short-term strategy, and you're going to have to get on board at some point. So that's not Bold Penguin advice. That's like, get on the distribution platforms advice in some way, right? You need a strategy. Now there's different ways to attack that, right? But build your APIs, get on the distribution platforms, figure it out, find out your strategy. Because like, the general thesis is, and it's, I don't even think it's a thesis anymore. It's like, small business insurance is going to go online, period, right? And so if you believe that, where you have to go find the deal flow, where's that deal flow, right? And so it's not going to be an agent going and filling out 15 different carrier portal sites. It's an agent filling out one site's application and then getting 15 responses back from carriers.
Yeah.
Like it's inevitable. Like it's not a yes or no, it's inevitable.
How well equipped do you see those carriers to, just from your experience, to kind of, so let's say you were to build the API, because there's more to it, right?
Yeah.
What's your view on their capabilities right now? How far are they investing enough? Are they paying enough attention?
I mean, it's
all over the map.
Yeah, it's a really nuanced answer, right? It's like any technology adoption, you're going to have a bell curve, right?
Yeah.
And so we're past the innovator stage. We're probably past the early adopter stage, and we're into the early majority stage, but that's still on the early side of the bell curve.
Yeah.
And so what I would be really worried about is making sure you're not the late adopter. Yeah. Right? I think you're at the point where you need to be a fast follower on this stuff as an insurance carrier looking at these distribution platforms.
And would your answer differ if you were working for Aon? If you were one of the traditional middleman,
No, my guess is Aon is a very similar belief because they bought CoverWallet, right? Yeah. CoverWallet's a distribution platform. So my guess is they have a similar thesis about this.
Yeah.
What's your opinion about, let's say, the more specialized SME carriers like Next Insurance and this kind of companies?
I mean, so I guess specialized small business insurance is still small business insurance, right? So you just have more products that you just need to bring online. So I think what I said still applies to, specialized small business insurance will come online. The more interesting market to me is the middle market and then the large complex risks. When will those come online? They're going to come online after small business insurance, just because it's like more complex. You're going to have more people looking at that. It's not going to be straight through output anytime soon. And so watching that stuff start to come online is really interesting to me. And we're starting to see more middle market stuff coming through the Wolverhampton platform. So I'm really curious to follow that.
And I think one of the things, and you said, bring your APIs online. What that also means is, expand the definition of what a product is. You're not done when you have your rates, your filings, etc. This API product. Now, what we see in some, do I think that you're going to insure a nuclear plant through an online form anytime soon? Probably not. Yeah. But would, let's say, if I was Maersk, I think that's the largest shipping company worldwide, and I'm sure they have the odd container moving around at any given time, and there's lots of dynamic risks happening. Would a truly dynamic and risk, adjustable product globally benefit from underwriters, actuaries who know what APIs are, who know how to push and pull data, who know how to adjust the cover and give a real-time view about it? It would be, just one product, very complex product. But I see those things happening, and I think it is also starting that journey, because creating a software product is a process, and it's funny when people kind of, what agile is, etc. But, I think that is where it's gonna buy into the large commercial space, where you have lots of dynamic products, where it's maybe not so much different policy holders, but different risks that can ping passive data around, and that are then constructed in a.
I think I'm laughing because, like, when I was in London kind of touring Lloyd's, that example actually popped in my head, which was like, oh, at some point we're going to be at a place where a ship is, transporting goods. And let's say, for example, it goes through a war zone or some place where there are pirates or whatever that is, right? At some point, we're going to get to the point where that ship, and maybe we're there, I don't know, that ship is going to ping the policy admin system with its GPS location. The policy admin system is going to say, oh, you're in a war zone. We should contact your owner and ask if they want to add war zone coverage to the policy, right? And then that decision can be made in real time. That policy gets amended. And then for the next 24 hours, you have this special coverage and then it goes away, right? Or another example would be like claims payout. I was thinking about this related to the Suez Canal blockage. Imagine if all those policies that all those ships had like business interruption coverage or something like that, and they all paid out just automatically because the GPS was able to note that there was a blockage of the Suez Canal, and you had like trillions of dollars switching hands just automatically. Like, I don't know.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's, and I think that's where it comes, and it doesn't have to be the full payout. It can just be, it's a liquidity boost. We know, it's going to cover probably 10 to 20%. It's going to be super complicated to regulate this thing, but we know that cash is actually of the essence. So, a little bit like parametric insurance works in flood insurance also.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the word parametric. It could not come to my brain. So yeah, that's exactly what I was referring to. So
I guess from my point of view, maybe a last question from my end, unless there's no hard stop here, but it's, do you see in your conversation with insurance executives, I don't like to talk about insurance companies. It's, there's a bunch of people working in insurance companies with their own goals, aspirations, career paths, incentives. Do you see a switch in their mentality in terms of it now actually is more beneficial for me to engage, to go digital, to partner, and not wait on the sidelines and see until this whole thing blows over? Do you see
100%
some FOMO?
Yeah, so like I think back to like 2015, the discussion was, or maybe a little bit sooner, 2012, 2013, 2014, the discussion was, should I be in the cloud? I swear that was like the discussion back there, right? And like by 2015, 2016, people had started accepting, yes, the cloud's safer than my on-premise server. And I think we're now like, and I think COVID was a great accelerator of this. Everyone, or not everyone, but many insurance executives that I talk to, it's like, yeah, of course, digital distribution has to happen. Now, granted, I only talk to the executives that are interested in it, not necessarily the ones that aren't interested in it, but I think there's more and more that are just like, oh yeah, of course. Like, and I think the more interesting for me even is like, some carriers really want to go this alone and build their own distribution platforms. And there's one person I'm thinking of in particular. I was like, you should build your own distribution platform because maybe you can attract people to it, but you're also going to have to be on other distribution platforms to get the deal flow. Because there's pipes and everything's going to be going in those pipes and it doesn't care what the site is. And so I just had that executive actually circle back around recently and be like, okay, let's talk about pricing and model and all that stuff. Because I think it needs to be both. It needs to be, all right, let's figure out our own internal strategy. How can we generate enough organic traffic, but also how do we connect to these other things and take advantage of them as well?
I mean, absolutely. If you're talking, it's funny. And it's, obviously, because of different regulation, there has been, especially in the UK, but also in Germany, much more, price comparison sites have been around for 15 years.
Yeah.
Right? It's like ATM is an innovation, but it's obviously due to regulation, etc. And if you're looking at what's actually happening, you have spillover. You have specific products that you quote there, and then you have a specific one, and you need to have a blended approach there, and one feeds the other. But I think it's just it's not either or. And I think that just needs to, the more you get engaged, and I could only encourage everyone, get on that API journey, because at some point you're kind of in in the wonderland, and it's just, there's so much opportunity, right, that you just kind of want to keep going. And I feel that the more of the industry is kind of in the early majority phase, it'll just benefit everyone because there's enough to go around.
Yep, no, I totally agree.
Gentlemen, that's it from my end. I don't know, Tom, do you have any last questions to put Chris on the spot?
I was just wondering, but perhaps I'm not a specialist in that field. How fast? But it's also a question of numbers and market shares. How fast this kind of things develop? Because on the one hand, we see, depending on the countries, for instance, the UK has been very early in this whole price comparison sites, and then it starts with, let's say, more or less simple products. Or when I think, for instance, about also specialized companies, talk pet insurance, we had a talk with Bought by Many, etc. Then it sometimes certain parts of the insurance sector develop very, very fast, and then for other ones, especially when it's more complicated, it takes much longer. But then you still have the opportunity to compare it with other countries. And in Europe, for instance, the UK is always pretty early in a lot of fields. It doesn't matter what it is, mobile phones or price comparison or independent advice, and then for instance the continent, then the Netherlands is also a little bit more advanced, and then Germany comes, and Austria or something like that. So I was just wondering if you compare this, for instance, in the US, which segments are already very much disrupted.
Yep.
And then probably SME is let's say later stage. How? But I don't have an idea of how these markets develop.
Yeah, I'll give you kind of some flag posts on that, or kind of mile markers, I guess. I guess first of all, insurance is about 10 years behind banking and finance.
Yeah.
Right. So that's number one. Number two, personal insurance is much further along than commercial insurance here in the United States. And then within commercial insurance, I mentioned small business insurance, I think, is in the early majority stage. So if you assume that, then the more complex risks like middle market and large complex is still in the early stage. So that's how I think about it here in the United States.
Yeah, but it's probably the same in Europe.
Yeah.
So what I find interesting, and that's also the discussion we often have between fintech and insurtech, that the question is, how much lessons learned are there from, let's say, parts of the industry which are more advanced, or taking fintech? Because in the end it's the same. So if you take neobanks or just as an example, the Revoluts, etc.
Yep.
It's exactly the same, and it's these are the same lessons learned, so to say.
Yeah, no, it's totally valid. And like, I think about like Plaid is a big company in the fintech space doing kind of the infrastructure for digital banking, right? And then you have the neobanks, and I am not an expert in fintech at all. So like, but I think of the neobanks that you mentioned, similar to kind of like the MGAs or kind of like online distributors of insurance that are out there as well, that are kind of like more of a big brand that's in the front trying to attract the customers. So yeah, Bold Penguin definitely fits into that infrastructure space for Insurtech, whereas then you have the brands that are out there trying to attract these businesses to buy insurance online. So same patterns are developing in Insurtech. I've read about 2020 was a really big year for fintech taking off. And I think it was somewhat of a big year for Insurtech taking off. But again, like I mentioned, we're about 10 years behind. So yeah, you do the math and when will that moment be where it's like, it's not even early majority, it's like a large majority are now doing online insurance. Eventually we'll get there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Pun intended, may the force be with you.
Oh dear. That's awesome.
It was really good talking to you. And, if I'm sure that the next time, for me, not this year, but ITC, you know, with the closest friends and family of the Insurtech community, you know, our paths will cross again, hopefully face to face.
For sure. Yeah. Well, it's great talking to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Lots of success.